on Tisha B'Av, but the Avelus of Tisha B'Av extends till today through Chatzos, and Chazal teach us, it's brought in Shulchan Aruch even, that the Avelus of the Churban, the Iker burning of the Churban, the Sreifas Beis Elokeinu, happened on Asar B'Av. It started on Tisha B'Av, so Mamela we have the tinus. It's brought in the Gemara, it's brought in the Mishnayos. It really comes from Psukim in the Navi that we start the Avelus on Tisha B'Av. And then we have, on the 10th of Av, there were tzaddikim. I believe there's still some people alive today that fast both days, unless they have a bris or a simcha.
Both days?
That fast the 10th also. Because the 10th is also a big churban. Yeah. It's brought down like that. It's not brought down, but people are...
Do they eat at night at least?
Maybe, I don't remember. But anyways, that's the thing. So, what's very interesting is that many times, the parashiyos of the Torah that we have on the Seder HaChumash, so, it's Parshas Bereshis, Parshas Noach. But then we have sometimes that the Parsha or the Shabbos is called by the name of the Haftarah. And I think we all know that this week is Shabbos נחmo. So what is נחmo? What is it exactly? And why is it called נחmo and what's it about? So we know lahalacha that 3 weeks for the Yemei Bein HaMetzorim from Shavuos B'Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, which is really over yesterday, which is today really, is that there are 3 haftarahs that we learn. It's called the Shloisha de Paranusa, the 3 difficult haftarahs that we learn. Now, for the next 7 weeks, starting this week, plus another 6, we have 7 weeks, called Shiva de Nechemta, 7 weeks of Nechama. You know when the last week of Shiva de Nechemta is? Yes. Right before Rosh Hashanah. And the Svarim teach us that there's a connection between the Yemei Bein HaMetzorim and the days of Yom Roim. Not going to talk about it for too long, but the Marsha and Bechairis, we mentioned this previously. The Marsha and Bechairis says that the 21 days from Rosh Hashanah to Hoshana Rabbah, it's corresponding on the bad side of things, or the difficult side of things, on the 21 days from Shavuos B'Tammuz till Tisha B'Av. And the 22nd day would be Asar B'Av, which would be Shmini Atzeres, which is the real culmination of everything. As we spoke yesterday in the Medrash says that there are 22 letters of the Aleph Beis, and that all the 22 letters of the Aleph Beis said that they're going to be made on Klal Yisrael, that they didn't keep the Torah. The converse of that is that the pasuk says yagilu v'nismach, and the Chazal teach us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will rejoice in us. What's Bach? Bach is Beis and the Chav. That's connected the Chav Beis, the 22 letters of the Aleph Beis. Yagilu v'nismach Bach b'shuasech, Bach b'teirasech. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu rejoices in the Yeshua of Klal Yisrael, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu rejoices in the Torah of Klal Yisrael. And as we spoke yesterday on Tisha B'Av, that's a big pshat in what the Churban is, that the Klal Yisrael wasn't roi to have the Torah, Klal Yisrael wasn't roi to have the Aleph Beis. Think about it for just a moment, that Chazal teaches us, tackled by Raisa Bar Alma, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked into the Torah and created the world. If there is no Torah, there is no Klal Yisrael, there is no world. In order for the world to exist, there has to be a Klal Yisrael, and there has to be a Torah. Bereshis, B'Shvil Yisrael Shenikra Reishis, B'Shvil HaTorah Shenikra Reishis. And it's very important for us to keep in mind, for us to understand that we are the Tachlis Habriya. But many times when a person is in a difficult situation, and you try to comfort him, and you tell him something, you medaber aliba, you try to speak to him, you try to be ma'ir him, you try to get him to recognize that things are going to get better, and he has a very hard time hearing it. It says by the Yidden in Mitzrayim, the pasuk says, "V'lashamu al Moshe mikaitza ruach me'avodah kasha." They couldn't hear what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying. Moshe Rabbeinu was the savior of Klal Yisrael. He's the leader of Klal Yisrael. We saw yesterday how Moshe Rabbeinu disappeared on Klal Yisrael. He just poof, just like that. He disappeared when they were standing on Ares Bavel. He appeared to them. They saw a vision of Moshe Rabbeinu standing there, and they turned to him and they said, "Rebbe, you're not going to take us back home?" And it looked so hopeful. It looked so good, and then all of a sudden he wasn't there anymore. So that in and of itself causes a person to lose a lot of hope. When Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Klal Yisrael and Mitzrayim, they weren't Klal Yisrael yet, but he comes to the Yiddish folk, the Jewish nation of Mitzrayim, and he tells them, Hashem sent a message to you through me that we're going to leave Mitzrayim soon. They couldn't hear what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying. They were so, when you use the Yiddish word, they were so reingetieft. They were so saturated with Avdus. Their mindset was a mindset of Avdus. Right? They have this story, whether it's true or not, it's irrelevant, but they have this story that there was an animal, let's say an elephant, that for many years was tied to a chain. And then some kind fellow comes and cuts the chain. The elephant still sits in the same place. It doesn't move. It doesn't get up and run away. We understand what it means to have a Yeshua. We understand what it means freedom. Or do we? Are we like that elephant that even when the chains are cut, we still sit there in the gullus? Or pshat is, we recognize that we're going to really get out of here. I want to ask you a question. You have a nice big house and wherever it is, right? And, Mashiach's going to come and we're going to go to Eretz Yisrael. Right? It's hard for me to let go of my, 25-acre property. And not so simple to just drop it and go. So maybe it'll be like that, maybe not. But I think a big part of what we're up against is that we're not so arangetift in Avdus, in the pain and the suffering today, like Klal Yisrael was in Mitzrayim. But we have it in a different way. We're slaves to our livelihood. We're slaves to the Gashmias. We're enslaved to whatever lifestyle we have, and we're not necessarily ready to put that aside to be able to be zeichet to the Yeshua.
I have a question.
1 second. Yeah. What's the question? Yeah.
How come back then when godliness was so much more revealed, how come then Jews were so much more immoral?
It's a very good question. And there's a few different, it depends who you ask, you're going to get different answers. It's very possible. I'm going to give you a non-answer answer. It's very possible that when the psukim tell us, there's big machlekes how to understand a lot of these parashas and a lot of these psukim, but many people understand that it doesn't necessarily mean that they were immoral in the sense that we think about today. On their level, there was a much higher expectation for them. For us, we're simple people. We're simple-minded people. What's the expectation for us already, right? But by then, because godliness was so widespread and was so well known, they had to hold themselves to a higher standard. And it's not the pshat that they were on the same level as us and they were more immoral than us. I don't know that that's correct. What?
It seemed like they did horrible things.
Yeah, but again, you have to understand. You have to learn the psukim well. Now, there's nothing wrong with learning the psukim kipshutam also.
Going to idols is
No,
it's not that small there.
Right.
They're just like,
Isn't that
Yeah,
what
1,000%.
like the Kohanim, the corrupt Kohanim. Like,
Yeah.
Like you
So-
can't exempt yourself
Yeah.
from
It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing that you mentioned that, and we spoke about this a lot. But in the beginning of Yirmiyah, we spoke about this. We spoke a lot about Yirmiyah the last week and a half or so. One of the concepts that keeps coming back, and we mentioned it in the Kinnis yesterday, was the concept that Yoshiyahu HaMelech was extremely, at one point, had a mamish, a change of heart, and when he got educated in Torah, which was later on in life, he was still a young man, but it was later on in life, a person who's 20, or even if he was 26, and he discovers Torah for the first time, if you grow up you go to yeshiva starting from kindergarten, Aleph Beis, you sing songs about Avram Avinu when you're 3 years old. Hashem is here, Hashem is there. You sing that when you're 1 year old, 2 years old. So it's a different type of chinuch. But he discovered a Sefer Torah later on in life, and he says, what's the Sefer Torah all about? Starts reading and starts going through it, and he says, the pasuk of Arash Alayakim says terrible things would happen if people don't follow the Torah. He's like, well, we never knew about this, right? And he started a massive tshuva movement that Shteitin Chazal. There was never such a big tshuva movement like in the days of Yeshio. And what happened is that he started a major campaign. You want to call it even like a mission, a war against the Avodah Zarah and the Avodah Zarah. But it became such a big part of the lifestyle that in as much as they said they can let go of it, you know those guys that have a kosher phone and a non-kosher phone?
Yeah.
It's a shtickle mashal. It's a shtickle mashal to this. They said they got rid of the Avodah Zarah. And Yoshio had messengers going around from house to house making sure that everybody got rid of their Avodah Zarah. The Rav of every shul knew who had a smartphone and who didn't have a smartphone, right? But they had a chap. What was their chap? They painted the Avodah Zarah, or they hid the Avodah Zarah behind the door of their house.
That's how when they open it up.
So when you open the door, you don't see the Avodah Zarah. So when the shluchim came in to get rid of the Avodah Zarah, they would search the house and they wouldn't see it because they would open the door and then it was hidden.
Well, that really worked.
Right? But that's as I stated. Many people. I don't say everyone, but many people. So in as much as they said...
What could he have done better?
So it's a very good question.
And
It's
also,
a
why
very
was he
good question.
killed For what everyone did. 300 arrows because some people were hiding their Avodah Zarah.
Right. It seems very difficult to understand. We said this in the Kinnis yesterday, and it's Psukim and Divrei Yomim. But yeah, again, there was higher expectations, right? I don't want to discuss the story of Yeshua, but that's Bichlal, a good way, maybe a good mahalach.
To allow the Egyptians to come in?
What?
Was he meant to allow the Egyptians to come in?
Probably not. Again, we talked about it a few times. One of the main issues we find in Nach again and again and again, besides for Avodah Zarah, is also relying on foreign governments. That they're going to be the ones that are going to save us. Mitzrayim is going to save us. Asher is going to save us. What does it say in the pasuk? Asher lo yoshienu. Asher is not the answer. Mitzrayim is not the answer. Right? Hashem Echad is the answer.
No, you could say that Mitzrayim is the messenger of Hashem.
But not when the Navi says it's not. You're not wrong. But not when the Navi says not to. And they believed that they were doing the right thing because they didn't want to listen to the Navi. And they said he was a Navi Sheker, or whatever the Tainus were. But
There's
that's,
a lot of Nevi'im Sheker, whatever you want to call it.
yeah, for sure. I mean, that was what Yirmiyah was up
Actually,
against.
you believe Yirmiyah.
Right? No, true. That was the conflict. That is the conflict of Yirmiyah Hanavi. One of the many conflicts of Yirmiyah Hanavi, as we spoke. But I want to bring it back to what נחמו is. Pasuk state, נחמו, Ami Yomer Lekechem, Dabra Lev Yerushalayim V'kiru Eleha. That's the Haftarah, and that's why this Shabbos is called Shabbos נחמו. Why נחmu, Ami? Why a double Nechama? So Chazal say, Loksa B'cheflayim. They got hit twice. First base of Mikdash, second base of Mikdash. Right? Also, we have the Lashon of the Gemara, the Brisa at the end of Masechet Makis that we're all familiar with. That Shuv Maisa, that they were walking by the Harabayas, and they see a Shualim that are walking in the Mokum of the Harabayas, and they Hischilu Kulam Boichim. Yeah. Hischilu Kulam Boichim, and they all started crying. Rabbi Kiva Metzachik, Rabbi Kiva is laughing. And they ask Rabbi Kiva, why are you laughing? So he says, same reason why you're crying. So he says, well, we're crying because this is the Mokum that, this is the Kaidosh HaKadoshim, and Azara Korev Yumas, and this was the place. And he says, that's good for him laughing, because Achlein is Kaiman of Vasei Shel, Zachariah and the Kaiman of Vasei Shel Uriah, and then they say, Akiva Nicham Tanu. It's Gemara Makas. They console the. Why the double lashon? So I think that the Mahalach is like this. The Shem Shmuel says this idea. Take it back to where we started from when Klal Yisrael was in Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu comes to tell them, listen, I have a message from God that we're taking you out of Egypt. The first step of Nechama is you have to realize that Nechama is possible, that Yeshua is possible. Many people give up hope, and they don't believe that they're ever going to get out of the matzav. Once that hope is instilled, then you could come out of it. But you first need to lay the groundwork that a nechama is possible. And only after you lay the groundwork that a nechama is possible, can you tell the person b'tzar, can you tell the person suffering, can you tell the person who experienced korban, that you're going to be zeicha to a nechama, that you're going to be zeicha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be menachem us. And that's the two levels of nechama. Now maybe we could explain this a little bit better, because we know, again, there was the first Beis HaMikdash that we lost on the account of the sins of the three cardinal sins of Gilui Arayos, Shrichas Dam, and Avodah Zarah. The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam. And we said, the Gemara says, that the Beis HaMikdash Rishon was Nizgalu Avainam, was Nizgalu Kitzam. The first Beis HaMikdash, they knew what they did wrong, and the Averos that they did were open. Mamela, the Kates, there was an end time. There was an end time that the Galus was going to end. Now, the second Beis HaMikdash was Loinus Galu Avainam, was Loinus Galu Kitzam. The second Beis HaMikdash, the sin wasn't revealed, so the Kates wasn't revealed. The Kates, meaning the end of the Galus, was not revealed. What does it mean that it wasn't revealed? Because they harbored the sin in their hearts, as we saw in the Gemara with the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. In the Beis HaMikdash Hasheni, we know, Chazal teach us, the Gemara Yuma, that there were five things that were missing. There were five things that were missing in the Beis HaMikdash Hasheni, in the second Beis HaMikdash. So if we want a true nechama, if we want a full nechama, we would want it to go back to the way it was in the first Beis HaMikdash. Not so much the way it was in the second Beis HaMikdash. Now, don't get me wrong. Life in the Tkufa, the second Beis HaMikdash, when Ezra came and built it, was very good. But remember, there's still a large portion of Klal Yisrael that was still in Golus, that didn't go back to Eretz Yisrael. Whatever that story was, Ayin Sefer Ezra Nehemiah. Big discussion over there. Not exactly, but that's also a separate story where they were supposed to leave and they didn't leave, and they should have left, and Yirmiyah told them to leave and they didn't leave, and they said they were going to be safe from Mitzrayim. What?
All Rabbanim said that you shouldn't go back.
1,000%. That's why we say not to listen to the Rabbanim. You got to listen to the Dvar Hashem. I'm joking. But the concept is that when we, so the Mefarshim will ask, and the Mefarshim will ask, that it says Gadol Yiyah Habayis Hazeh Ha'achron Yosem in the Rishon, that the second Beis HaMikdash is going to be even greater than the first Beis HaMikdash. But if you go through the Chazal and you go through the Psukim, so maybe the physical structure was bigger. It lasted around 10 more years. But other than that,
I thought the first Beis HaMikdash lasted for 400.
420.
Which one was 420?
The first one.
The second one was, the first one was 410, second one was 420. I think.
The second one was 210, no?
No. But so the question is, what steht in Pasuk? The Gemara brings this Pasuk. So what's the pshat? What's the pshat in this Pasuk? So they bring a Chazal. For many years. I heard this Chazal. I didn't know where it was. It could be. It comes from Isis Rebbe Kiva. It's one of these midrashim that's not so learned so much. Maybe in Pirkei Hechalais or something like that. One of the more Kabbalistic midrashim. And it says over there that even though in the Etzem Hashras Hashchina of the Beis HaMikdash, but the Hoida Ziva V'Hadara of the second Beis HaMikdash was very much transferred. The Kedusha and the Madreg of Hashras Hashchina of the second Beis HaMikdash was transferred over to the Talmidei Chachamim Ha'iskim B'Torah. And we say at the end of Shmoneh Esrei, Sheyibana Beis HaMikdash Memher V'Yemeinu V'Sein Chelkeinu B'Sar Sechad. The two things go together. But that's very much in the world of the second Beis HaMikdash, as we said. The main. So again, when we have נחmu Ami, we want to console and comfort Klal Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, נחmu, a double lashon, because I want to bring you back to the madrega of the second Beis HaMikdash, but a real nechama would bring us back to even the madrega of the first Beis HaMikdash, together with all the milas that we had in the second Beis HaMikdash. The hainu like this. It's true that the Ikar Hashras Hashchina that we had in the second Beis HaMikdash was transferred over to Talmidei Chachamim, and those that are Isaac B'Torah. But that's not going to be lost when we have the true nechama. The hainu, we're going to have the Arna, we're going to have the Urim V'Tumim, we're going to have the Ruach HaKodesh, and we're going to have Nevuah, and we're going to have everything that existed in the first Beis HaMikdash, plus all the milos that we had in the second Beis HaMikdash. That's a true nechama. Want to continue the psukim inside? So we're going to go through some of the psukim. Kolzman, we have time. And what does it say? נחמו נחמו ami yomer lekechem. Now, just that we should know, we mentioned this in the past, but we'll say it again, that this is in Yeshaya, Parak Mem, and we know that Yeshaya is the Navi of comfort. If you ever feeling down, you ever feeling like, the world is in a bad state, you ever think about Tisha B'Av a little too much when it's not Tisha B'Av, open up a Sefer Yeshaya, you'll start feeling a little better.
Okay.
The Gemara says in Bava Basra
Can't play like
that Yeshaya is Rubai Nechama, or Kulei Nechama.
Saw that.
And the reason is because Yeshaya keeps talking about the beauty of Klal Yisrael,
No one plays
not only the beauty of Klal Yisrael when there was a Beis HaMikdash, but the beauty of Klal Yisrael when we're going to be Zeicha to the Gula Asida. Yeshaya's focus was to tell Klal Yisrael that life is going to get better. Life is going to be good. And although the first kapitel in Yeshaya we learned last Shabbos, Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amayt is a very difficult nevuah. It's a very, very difficult parasha to read and to understand because he delineates and speaks out clearly the Averis and how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want us in his Beis HaMikdash. How much HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not interested in our karbanos. Yedecha dama mileyu, your hands are full of blood. Who asked you to come and trample on my chutzner, to trample on my Beis HaMikdash? Right? So that's נחמו Ami. This is Yeshaya's goal. This is Yeshaya in the truest sense, in the fullest sense of giving the Nechama to Klal Yisrael. Dabra alev Yerushalayim. Speak to the heart of Yerushalayim. V'kiru eleha, and call out to it. Ki mala tzva, ki nirtza avodim, ki lokcha miyad Hashem keflaim b'chol chatoseha. So keflaim is what we said before, that there were two Goliaths. There was Golos Bavel, and then there was other Goliaths. Like we said, two Batei Mikdash. But what does it mean, Dabra alev Yerushalayim? I want to talk about that for a moment. One of the biggest chasadim that you could do in Hilchos Tzedakah, it's Mavur in the Rambam, and it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, that there are many levels of tzedakah that a person could do. Now, the Gemara says that Gemilas Chasadim is bigger than tzedakah. Why? Because Gemilas Chasadim, there's many different types of Gemilas Chasadim. Tzedakah is generally understood as giving money to support somebody, to support someone's family. Chesed, on the other hand, is like help an old lady with the packages. Chesed is Bigur Chaylim. Chesed is Hachnasas Kala. Right? Hachnasas Kala may be helping someone pay for a wedding, but maybe it also means being Mesameach by a wedding. Chesed means going to be Menachem Avel somebody. Now, what's very important to know is that many people think so the Gemara says that Gedol Gemilas Chasadim Yesem and Tzedakah. That Gemilas Chasadim is greater than Tzedakah. I want to talk about this and how it relates to the Beis HaMikdash. Going back to Kamsa, Bar Kamsa made a party and he tells him, "What are you doing here?" Abal Chesed don't do that. Abal Chesed invites people to his house, doesn't throw people out of his house. There's a funny vart, the famous vart, that says Gedola Hachnasas Archim Yesem Mekabalas Pnei Shechina. There's the Gemara, we mentioned this Gemara, it's a Gemara Shabbos, we know about it from Avraham Avinu, from Parshas Vayera, that Hachnasas Archim is greater than Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. It's a funny thing. L'chayra Kabbalas Pnei Shechina is a very great thing. So how is Hachnasas Archim bigger than that? So there was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, one of the early Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov was called the Toldus. And he says in his Sefer that the reason why this is so is because the Gemara says that people who speak Lashon Hara, they're not Mekabel Pnei Shechina. People who speak Lashon Hara, the Shechina doesn't want anything to do with them. And it's a good opportunity to lose the Hashras Shechina. But, sometimes you invite people for Shabbos, then they just talk, and it happens. People have lots to say, and sometimes they don't say the right thing. Sometimes they don't speak appropriately. But you don't interfere. You let them say what they have to say. So that's, it's Yosem Mekabel Pnei Shechina, just to invite the people and Sometimes you have a tzibroch on a person. Many times you invite a tzibroch on a person to your house for a Shabbos Suda, and they start talking and they say, well, you know what this one said, you know what that one said, and this one, that one, the other one, you know, and it's very interesting because he says that's you know, you let the Yidden talk, don't say anything to them. And I don't know how if this is you know everyone agrees to this or how exactly this works, but it's very very important to be medaber. When you're mevaker choila, it says, when you give tzedakah, it says that you should be medaber elev ha'ani. If you don't have money, right? If you don't have money, it doesn't mean that you just turn the person away. You tell him, you say, listen, right now I don't have money, but you know I wish you much hatzlacha in your endeavors. Or you're making a wedding. I'm so happy for you making a wedding. Unfortunately, right now I can't give you any money towards it. Maybe one day I will have money for it. I will be able to help you. Or maybe you try to arrange for somebody else that does have money to give him a little bit of money. But the nakud is to be medaber elibay, to speak to his heart, to make him feel better, to be menachem him. Think about if you were struggling in a similar situation, and you needed money, or you needed something, and you needed to rely on other people, or you needed to, or you were a nitzrach for something, and you had somebody that, you know, that person that came over to me, he made me feel so much better. He didn't give me any money, just made me feel better about myself. That's what it means, dabra alevi Yerushalayim v'kirvei leha. That's a huge part of the nechama, is to be medaber alev ha'ani. Is to be medaber to the lev of the chayla. Is to be misameach the chasam b'dvarim. Right? You tell the family how good of a guy this chassan is. You tell the family how good of a girl the kala is. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you any money. Tzedakah costs you money. And yes, it's a mitzvah that requires us to spend money. Right? You spend money on asrik, spend money on nice tefillin. You spend money that yen a person should have a nice Shabbos. You spend money that yen a person should have a nice wedding for his child. But the nakud is, even if you don't have money, if you're, you know, you're almost collected. I'll tell you a funny story. My grandfather, Olav Shalom, used to take the train sometimes from where he lived, and there was a guy there. They used to always ask him for money. He said, "It's a shaila. You give a guy money. You don't give a guy money."
Nowadays,
But Mepnei Shalom,
nowadays don't. If you see someone on the street, a guy on the street, nowadays don't give him money. You know what he's going to spend it on.
right?
Well, even Jews sometimes.
Yeah. So, but Mipnei Eva, you give him a quarter. You give him a quarter.
You're gonna give him something to food.
So my grandfather, was a couple of weeks before he was nifter, was coming off the train, and he meets his friend in the train station, and he says, "Rabbi, you got $1?" So my grandpa says, "Unfortunately not. This time I don't have any money." See, he says, "Rabbi, you want me to collect for you?" Right? But, you know, why does this guy want to collect for my grandfather? Why did he say that? Because my grandfather was nice to him. My grandfather probably told him good morning. You know, it was a fascinating thing. After my grandfather was nifter, so many people came to the house of Nachmo Avel, and so many of them didn't even know him. They just knew that was the guy who, when he would pass by in the street, he would say hello. And he would just say, "Hey, what's doing?" Like, that was it. That was the whole relationship. My grandfather was an accomplished Talmud Chacham, and he was a wise man, and he was a Rav, the Chashuv guy, right? But that wasn't, the difference was that he was nice to the people. Many times, all we have to do, the chesed that we could do, is to be medaber alibay. And we mentioned this chazal before, and we'll say it again, because I feel like it fits very nicely with everything that we're saying. It says in Avos Reb Nassan, in the beginning, Avos Reb Nassan is going through the Al Shleisha Dvarim Olam Oimid Al Atayra Val Avodah Val Gemilas Chasadim, and he's marich in Avos Reb Nassan to describe and the psukim and different ideas that we have from this Chazal, from this Mishnah of Torah Avodah and Gemilas Chasadim. And on the Mishnah Gemilas Chasadim, he says the following: that they were passing by the Mokum HaMikdash, and I believe there was still a little bit of smoke. There was still plenty of ashes there from the Churban, shortly after the Churban Beis HaMikdash. and he was crying, and he was very distraught, because it brought back all the memories of the Churban, brought back all the memories of what we lost. And he says, what do we have now? What do we have today? The Beis HaMikdash is Charav, the Shechina is in Galus. Vaz Hartman, what do we have? What's left?
Wasn't the Shechina in Galus the whole time since the Beis HaMikdash wasn't being used properly?
So there were different levels. Chazal said there were different levels of losing the Galus. But the Chazal say, of the Thir and Avos Reb Nassim, that what was the response to this? The response to this was that when you do chesed, when you're goimel chesed to another person, it's kilu the Beis HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt. It's kilu we still have the Beis HaMikdash. The hainu, the relationship between the Yidden should be in a way of kindness, of being medaber alev, to speak to the heart of the person, to see what the person needs. You know, what's Bikur Chaylim? I think we mentioned this a while ago. What's Bikur Chaylim? Visiting the sick. It's not visiting the sick. Bikur means to check, right? You check up on the Chayla to make sure that he has everything that he needs. And the Gemara tells us a story that Rebbe Kiva came to visit his Talmud, and he saw that nobody was there. And he saw that the place wasn't being taken care of. So you know what the holy Tana Rebbe Kiva did? He opened the windows, and he took a broom, and he started sweeping, and he cleaned up the guy's room. And he told people, by the way, your friend is sick, go and visit him. But nobody's going to want to visit him if his room is a mess, if his room smells. So Rebbe Kiva cleaned it out, aired it out, made it better, right? And the Gemara says elsewhere, not related to the story, somebody who separates himself from Rebbe Kiva is like he's separating from life itself. Rebbe Kiva saw to it that this Talmud of his, that this I don't know if he's Shiva Bacher, could be he was married, I don't know. It doesn't sound like he was married, because I don't know where his wife was if he was doing, this is what he was going through. But Al Kalpana, Rebbe Kiva saw to it that this person was feeling better. Not feeling better physically in the sense, but feeling emotionally. You know, many people think that the mitzvahs, Torah mitzvahs, you got to just do them. There's a huge mitzvah, and there's a nechama. There's a tremendous nechama when someone speaks to us. They're speaking at you, and then they're speaking to you. Many times people speak at you. They tell you things, and they tell you ideas, and they give you advice. But they're not sitting with you. And they're not imay anochi b'tzara type of discussion. They don't understand necessarily where you're coming from. But real nechama is when somebody understands your pain, and somebody sits with you in your tsar, understands your tsar, and tries to help you feel better by not even so much by taking you out of the tsar, just sometimes the mere fact of somebody making you feel better is enough that you could get out of your tsar on your own. And that's what it means to dabru alev Yerushalayim. Because Yerushalayim is the heart of the world. And it's the heart of the Jewish people. The heart of the Jewish people belongs in Yerushalayim. But we can't be there if the Shualim Hilchubay. Then we know that it's not for us. And really that's the story of נחmu, and that's why it's the double lashon. Because we have to first be able to get into the system to be able to believe that we're shaykh to a nechama. You know, many people are going to say, well, we're in such a bad matzav today that we're not even deserving of it. Then you're not holding then you're still in the first realm of nechama. The second level of nechama is the pshat that we're taka ready to go home. It's not just that, okay, we're going to feel better. There's a certain excitement to be able to go home. Right? A person, Leilani, was in the hospital. And, he's feeling a little better today than he felt yesterday. Okay. He says, I'm still attached to all the machines. I still got to have the doctors check up on me. I'm not really ready to go home. That's the first level of nechama. But when the doctor comes in and gives him the besura and says, Reb Yid, today you're going home, he's excited. He can't wait. He's been away from home for so long. He's going to be with his wife, and he's going to be with his children, and he's going to be able to sit on his couch.
That's a great feeling.
I want to tell you something. I spoke to people I worked with people that came out of jail, okay? I think I mentioned this first half. I worked with people that came out of jail, and I asked somebody, I don't remember what I asked them. It was something along the lines like, what do you do in your free time? Or like, how do you enjoy yourself? He said, just sitting on the couch. I'm like, that's it? He says, listen, when you're in a cell, you don't have anything.
Enjoy doing nothing.
He says, I just came out of jail after, I don't know, it was 2 years, 3 years, whatever it was. He said, I want to just enjoy sitting on the couch. I want to just enjoy just being a free person. True נחama is when we recognize that the Torah mitzvahs are not out to get us. You know, my Rebbe said an interesting word. My Rebbe said an interesting yesod. I think if we think about this yesod, it'll be very helpful for us to learn Torah and to do mitzvahs with a much bigger gishmak. We hear the expression all the time, oil malchus shemayim, oil mitzvahs, oil Torah. What's an oil? An oil is a yoke. An oil is a burden. It's a burden. I have to spend who knows how much money on tefillin. You know, my wife has a friend who's a Baal Tshuva, and her husband said, you know, when they became frum, no one told us how expensive a Jewish lifestyle is. It's expensive. Kosher food is expensive. Tuition's expensive. These things cost a lot of money. Not that we shouldn't do it because it costs too much money, like we just said before, but tzedakah, you got to spend money. It's not even a shayla. It's not even a question, right? But the idea is, my brain crashed. I don't know where we're holding. Yeah, we were saying before that.
But the idea is,
Broke down. Crashed. Just give me a minute. See if we could... All Torah, all mitzvahs. Torah mitzvahs being a burden. There's a lot that we have to do. There's a lot that's expected of us. There's a lot that's required of us. And, you know, many times we feel like it's too much. I don't know. Maybe Shabbos should be a little shorter this week. Or maybe I don't want to wear tefillin today. I don't want to daven today. I don't have to bench the whole benching. I don't want to wash before. It's annoying to wash. Right? I was a pain. I have to sit through a Shabbos Suda. It's not fun. I mean, for some people it's fun, right? But the idea is, if you look at it like oil is as a burden, and you say, you know, it's like a heavy weight on your shoulders, and you get weighed down by it. We know the Torah says, the Gemara says in a lot of places, talking about different mitzvahs, the mitzvahs are pleasant. And I heard an interesting psak from Shem Reb David Feinstein, whatever the story was, that a person was suffering a lot from doing certain mitzvahs. And Reb David told the person that the Torah says, so if you're in so much pain from doing mitzvahs, then you don't have to do them. There's an interesting psak. You don't hear that psak every day. But you don't have a person who has sorrows like this every day. But the concept is that if you view an oil as a yoke, meaning, what's an oil? An oil is that piece that you put on the donkey or the ox's back that you attach to the plow, that you attach it to the wagon. And when the shur turns to the right, the wagon goes to the right. When it turns left, the wagon goes to the plow goes to the left. We attach ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to the Torah. The Torah says to go left, we go left. Hashem says to go to the right, we go to the right. Hashem says Shabbos, we keep Shabbos. Hashem says tefillin, we do tefillin. And not because it's a burden, but because we're attached, because we're connected. If the concept of churban is disconnection, in the word churban you have the word chibur. What's pshat? But like we said so many times before, the two opposite sides of a coin, it's not two different coins, it's the same coin, just the other side. The opposite of churban is chibur. You want to be able to create the connection, you have to invest in the relationship. relationships don't just happen from nowhere. You have to be able to invest in the relationship, involve yourself in invest yourself in who you're relating to, what the relationship is all about. And maybe by thinking about being makabel on ourselves to do mitzvahs with more simcha, more geschmack, will definitely make the galus easier. And maybe to the extent that we'll be zeicha to a real nechama. Maybe. And we have to be hopeful that it will come. And that's, but I think that's another thing that we should talk about, maybe if we have time. And that is, that if we truly want and recognize what it means to be in galus, and what it means to have to be missing the Ashras HaShechina, and to be sad about it, and to appreciate what it was when we had it, like we spoke before Tisha B'Av. So then we'll be zeicha to a geula and a nechama for us and for all of Achenu B'nai Yisrael, as we say all the time. Okay?